Good day. There's a country called Cuba that has been under sanctions in 1962. Cuba has had economic embargo placed on her by America. To think Cuba is just 90 miles away from America, you would think that the closeness to America would help Cuba to be a very powerful and close and economically developed country. But no, economic embargo has ruined Cuba because they don't have access to a lot of goods. They don't have access to a lot of things that should have assisted them in their growth and development. Cuba has been at odds with America for several years now, since, like I said, the 60s. And because of that, Cuba is, if you go to the Cuban capital, Havana, it's very glaring. You will see cars from a generation way back that makes you think that you're in the 50s and the 60s and the 70s. That's what the impact of sanctions. Countries that have fallen under American air include Libya, Zimbabwe, Uganda, Iraq, Korea, Venezuela. The list is long. Iran. Some have found their way out of countrywide sanctions, but some are still under sanctions. None has suffered the brunt of sanctions more than Russia. Russia, though, has found a way because her own she is rich in a lot of materials, but time and chance has favored Russia. A new reality has come into the world, and that reality is China. China has decided that they are a sovereign country, and even though most of the sanctions placed on countries these days were taken outside the framework of the United Nations system, China stands against unilateral imposition of sanctions against countries. It is for that reason that China says that the sanctions against Iran is a unilateral action, and for that reason they were buying oil from Iran. There was a time that it was not a wise thing to stand against America when America places sanctions on certain countries, but that time has gone. China has become a bulwark, a route, a bypass, or a vista by which many countries can bypass the full brunt and effect of American sanctions. Good day, and welcome to my channel, Ibima Mungo's Perspective on Global Affairs. If you're new to this channel, please subscribe. If you have any comments regarding the opinion I express here, please put them in the comment section. China has become a means by which sanctions against countries is being dulled. China has defanged or is slowly defanging America. The potency of American sanctions is reducing every day, and China is the reason for that. China is the reason why 22,000 rounds of sanctions against Russia doesn't seem to have bothered Russia. Rather, Russia has become strengthened and is enjoying economic and manufacturing renaissance. Why? Because when sanctions were placed on Russia, they attacked the biggest product that Russia sells to the world, which is hydrocarbons, oil and gas. Sanctions. Um, uh, China took full benefit of that offer of Russian gas, discounted Russian gas, and started to buy discounted Russian gas, and now have access to Russian gas because there was a time they weren't able to, but now they now get 40 billion cubics of Russian gas and through their Siberia 1 plant, and they are also about building the Siberian 2. They buy huge volumes of Russian oil too. The same too for India. India too has become another pathway by which Russia avoided the full effects of the sanctions against her. For the Russians, for the Indians, they're unapologetic. They've had a long relationship over time with the Soviet Union and now with Russia. So the full effects of trying to limit Russia's access to cash, access to finance, and access to money was not met. But if nothing else, they are trying to limit access to machinery that has really suffered. because now the Russians have moved to the Chinese and are now buying Chinese machinery, Chinese CNC machines, Chinese machining tools, Chinese cars, Chinese automotive products, Chinese, the whole beauty of the Chinese economy, the growth in it has become bare and available to the Russians, and it has helped them in bypassing the potency of all these rounds of sanctions. But they are not giving up. Today, KAJA, the EU Commission finance spokesperson, or the person who heads the finance desk in the EU Commission, said she was lamenting that they were not able to get a unanimous decision in passing the 18th round of sanctions against Russia. This attempt to break the Russians doesn't seem to be getting anywhere, especially as President Donald Trump is also not too keen on supporting the Ukrainians in their fight against Russia. The fact that President Trump has opened up the floodgates again of arms supply to Ukraine, and it has emerged that President Trump asked the Ukrainians if they can, with long-range missiles, shoot into Moscow. And Zelensky answered that yes, they can get to Moscow. The news also has emerged that President Trump has urged Zelensky not to shoot into Moscow. But we all know the repercussions. The Russians have been very emphatic in their statements anytime something is done against any of their cities, using drones or using Western weaponry. They rain huge amounts of missiles and drones into Kiev and all the cities of Ukraine. But the fact that they can do that is a testament of one of the great channels of bypass nobody foresaw, and that channel is China. China, like I said, is defanging America slowly. And over the course of these past few months, we have seen how China has started to assert itself in a way that really surprised everybody. And what was that? China found out that in putting export controls on rare earth metals and rare earth magnets, they almost brought the world economy to a stop, at least for those countries that need those materials for the manufacture of military equipment, the manufacture of automotive equipment, the manufacture of aeroplanes, and just the manufacture of a lot of high-end specialist electromagnetic products, including smartphones. The true strength of China's control of 90% of the supply chains of these rare earth metals became clear for all when China put export controls. But it is not just the export controls that is really the issue now. In the past week, China has signed currency swap deals with two countries, Brazil and Egypt. The whole idea now is that they can trade in local currencies using their local currencies in their trade, and they can do this using the Chinese payment system called CHIPS, cross-border interbank payment systems. This will mean that they don't need to trade using the old and Western-controlled system called SWIFT. Their trade and the volumes of trade they have will not go through the international settlement systems that we all know. It will not go through all the reporting systems that are in the West, and so whatever trade they trade between themselves is not known to the West. So now, if America wants to use that financial power, that access to the financial system of SWIFT as a tool against any country now, all they need to do is use the American system. The Chinese have built out this system so meticulously and have been using it to get a lot of countries to sign up. Now they do business and they are the largest trading partner of 128 countries. And because of that, they've already managed to get 50 countries to sign up on currency swaps between these countries, and trading in their local currencies is now a way by which China is making sure that they bypass the American dollar, and in making the American dollar less important in their trade, they are de-dollarizing. The effect of Chinese power was seen recently when, in the past 2 days, we've come to see some reports about what China has done and what kind of concessions President Trump is giving to China. The first of them, it was reported yesterday that several semiconductor design software producers and providers, including Synopsys, Cadence Design Systems, Siemens, have had export restrictions to China lifted by the Trump administration. So these companies can now sell semiconductor design software to the Chinese buyers who have always used them in electronic design automation software, who use them in building their own semiconductor products. Another thing too that emerged was that today, Jensen Huang, the head of NVIDIA, who at this point in time is actually in China, has been arguing with the Trump administration that sanctioning and denying Chinese companies access to American technology has not benefited America at all. The age of artificial intelligence is here, and America and China are the two leading proponents of AI. For that reason, they are building out a lot of data centers. In fact, China is just about to build out 39 new data centers in Xinjiang province, because China produces a lot of electricity within that province, renewable energy, wind power, and solar power. And these data centers use a lot of electricity. And being very rich and having ability to produce surplus energy, China is building these data centers, and the Americans have come to see that if they don't let Huawei, NVIDIA, into the Chinese market, a market that is expected is said to be $50 billion in worth, then that market will be left to only Huawei and the Huawei Ascend chip to provide chips and semiconductor chips to the people who build these data centers. So President Trump relented, and he has allowed NVIDIA to sell H20 chips to the Chinese. This is another win, and this is all that came out of the trade war and the fallout of Chinese holding on to their side and showing their own hand. Because now it has become very clear that the Trump card is not in Trump's hand. The Trump card is really in the hand of the Chinese. And when the Chinese showed their hand and made the Americans to meet them in two meetings, because let's not forget, when Trump put sanctions on the Chinese did not budge. They responded. And when Trump was expecting that Xi Jinping would call him, Xi Jinping never called him. So what did he do? He dispatched first Scott Bessent to go and meet with the Chinese in London. And later on, he dispatched Howard Lutnick and Scott Bessent again to meet in Geneva. And it was there they built a framework and agreed that by August 8th, they will have a trade agreement. Since then, the Americans have been very, very humble and have given a lot of concessions to China. If we remember, in the first trade war between China and America during the Trump administration, one company, Huawei, was sanctioned very seriously. They were put on the entity list and they were thrown off access to American technology. So their consumer department almost died. But over the course of 4 years, they've built so many things that has made them show the resilience of our Chinese power. Huawei is now a huge technology company. They have their own software called Harmony OS. They now have their own version of a 7 nanometer chip that they are now using in their own computer, in their own softwares again now, 5G smartphones. They also now are good in car automation. So they have a software that controls cars, automation for cars. They also use that same software in automating ports. They also use that software. They have become so big and such an industrial juggernaut. But if nothing at all in this age of AI is a threat they pose to NVIDIA and companies like yeah, mainly NVIDIA though, because they have their own accent chip, which is just a step behind the power of NVIDIA chips. So they are a clear and present threat. Added to that, Chinese models like AI models like ChatGPT and which were number one or number two leading models, which are the world global leading model, have been challenged by open source models from from China, including DeepSeek, Gwen by Alibaba, and all Beidou tools, Beidou and their own chip and their own AI models, which they give out free. So the threat of China now as a peer competitor when it comes to technology and AI is even very clear for all to see. But if that is not anything at all, it is the clear advantage China has in power production, especially production of power from solar energy and renewables. That is the reason why the industrialization in China is going at a pace that even the Europeans, the Germans, the French, and they're all opening factories there. One other thing too that will show you where the world really is now as regards to Chinese growth is in the Chinese EVs. BYD as a company has shown how it not only has overtaken Tesla as the number one producer of electric vehicles in the world, it is beginning now to open up factories all over the world. It has already opened one in Thailand. It opened one recently in Brazil, and it is about to open another one in Hungary. BYD and NIO, Xpeng, and all these Chinese EV companies are just showing the world that Chinese technology is as good as American technology, and all the strengths and power that America used to have in sanctioning and placing countries on economic embargo seem to be receding and reducing. China is slowly defanging America, and that is a real border. So when the geopolitics is discussed, it may be mainly we discuss it in geographies and locations. But geopolitics is also fought in the technological realm. And we're seeing it now with the fact that the Chinese are moving ahead slowly on many, many parameters, many, many sectors of the technological plane. And that is also limiting the once powerful power of America in sanctioning countries. China is defanging America slowly. This is where I end my video for today. If you have any your own opinions and comments regarding the views I've expressed here, please place them in the comment section. If you feel that China is doing to America something different from what I have, or if you think America can withstand all that China is doing, please place them in the comment section. If you're new to this channel, please subscribe and like and share. Thank you for being with me to this point. See you in my next video.